This is the Get a Life podcast. Ex-Cult Conversations.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Get a Life podcast in the UK. And this evening I've got with me my lovely friends. We've got Ross Turner, and we've got another Ross Atmore, and Jackie Hart. And our special guest this evening is Fritz Penney. So Fritz, good to see you and welcome to the podcast.
Okay.
Looking forward to hearing your story, and let's get started.
Excellent. Yeah, so hello, I'm Fritz Penney. I was brought up in the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church in Southampton, so we're on the south coast of the UK. I'm now Fritz Edgar Penney. I was brought up Fritz Howard Morton, so very different, but I took my husband's name when we got married, and the Edgar part I'll explain later. So I've got three siblings. So I've got two brothers. I've got an older brother, a younger brother, and I've got a sister who came a bit later. So she's 10 years younger than me. Parents both came from large families. So dad is one of 7 children, and mum is one of 6. They've all got married, had kids. Apart from dad's younger sibling, he had something called Edward syndrome, which meant he died after a day after being born. But he was born a month exactly before I came along. So he was April 25th, I was May 25th. So it meant that I had a particularly special relationship with my paternal grandparents. Yeah, we were really close as a family, very close, even cousins, first cousins, second cousins, we were really close. I was very close to my mum. And yeah, she was obviously my mum. She would get frustrated with me. She would nag me to do this, that, and the other, clean my room up, all the rest of it.
Mums do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was also my best friend. We would chat for hours. She would ask me advice on her outfits and headscarves and shoes and the rest of it. And we'd shop together, and I loved doing the Sunday dinner with her. She's amazing. She's really loving and selfless, and she really loved life.
So perhaps should explain for the outside listeners, Sunday dinner tended to be a bit of a thing in the Brethren, didn't it? A sort of a large, I mean, you explained, Fritz, but it was a large roast. You'd probably have up to 20 people round, and all. Yeah,
absolutely. We weren't very well off at all. We didn't have the biggest house in the world. I shared a bedroom with my brother up until the day I left. So yeah, we didn't have that many around, and it was always very high pressured. There's always a expectation of what the meal and the time was going to bring. So yeah, so I knew mum probably kind of felt that a little bit.
There was an element of almost competition about it.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
Understand. So your mum probably really appreciated some help with it, because all I know is I didn't have to do it because I wasn't married in the Brethren, but Anne did, didn't you? And Roz did, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it was darn hard work, wasn't it?
Yeah. And of course it's the... Sorry, Ross, go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I know my mum, Fritz, we were in the same boat as you, really. We weren't very well off either. And my mum used to get so het up about a Sunday because she knew, all the best was expected, and we couldn't afford it, really. Anyway, sorry, go on, Fritz.
No, that's right. That's exactly. And of course, the Sunday dinner was always the woman's job in the Brethren.
Of course.
It always fell to the woman to do. So obviously, from that point, I was always looked at a little bit differently because I was in the kitchen rather than entertaining the Brethren as I probably should have been. But yeah, I've got this amazing video of mum that I really treasure that I've got now of her. We used to be responsible for opening up the meeting rooms before the Brethren came and sort of get the meeting room ready. And one night, we was in one of our subdivision meetings, so one of the little meetings in the area, and mum decided to jog around the car park in her high heels, and she's got this incredible laugh. It's a really cheeky chuckle, and it's incredible because I treasure it now, because it's obviously one of the very few videos or sounds I've got of her, and it's amazing. It just shows what a person she was. So we were brought up, I would say, in a very strict household. We always sort of followed the rules. We certainly weren't anywhere near the top of the rung of the ladder in the Brethren in our city. We certainly didn't feel like it. So yeah, and I would always say I was a particularly good boy. Always followed the rules and said the right things, I think. In school, I was, I followed the rule to every letter. I only got my name on the board once in my entire life, and that was it. And I think that transferred from what we've been taught at home, but also going to school, I was, felt like I needed to follow the rules.
Yeah. So you were of an age where you were in one of the one schools, Brethren schools, not a mainstream school. Yeah,
absolutely. So I was homeschooled from early years to year 2 by mum. Don't remember much about that. State school was year 3 to 6. So we went to state school during that time. We were very much the odd ones out during that time. So we weren't allowed to touch or use computers, use the TV. If there's prayers in the assembly, we'd have to walk out, that kind of thing. And then Brethren school was from year 7 to obviously the end of the education at college. Hated it. But I think the sort of the hierarchy in the Brethren very much transferred into the hierarchy in school. There's a lot of different bullying going on. Particularly, I was very much the odd one out in the school anyway, especially with the rest of my male classmates. And that's obviously when I started feeling particularly different. I remember pretty much my whole time in the Brethren school, they used to mimic how I spoke. So when I had to read out loud to the class, I actually dreaded it because I would have these people in the background mimicking me, and eventually I just stopped talking. I just thought, okay, I'll just be silent. And there's one particular lesson where the boys, the teacher asked us what our favourite lessons were, and of course all the boys were like woodwork, PE, all the rest of it. And I answered history and art. And I remember a boy behind me turning to his classmates and whispering loud enough for me to hear, "He's gay." And
wow.
I obviously didn't have a clue that was what it was at that point, but also I knew that it wasn't a good thing. That was wicked and evil. And the fact that someone had labelled it on me without me even realising that's what it was, already put the terror in me. People often ask that when did I know? And I don't think I can actually put a date on it or anything like that. I always was different. My brothers were in the Brethren live in a world of stereotypes. So my brothers loved being outside. They loved chopping trees and playing with cars and this kind of thing. Dad was a builder, so he loved doing projects in the house, carpentry and that kind of thing. And I was inside helping mum baking. When I was little, I was dressing up in mum's heels and putting on plays and shows and that kind of thing.
And they didn't realise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was always the odd one out. I felt even, in my own family.
Yeah.
But yeah, they always used the word gay as a slur. It was always, that's gay, that sounds gay, you sound gay, you look gay. And all those supposedly small messages were actually, they all embed themselves in your mind. They all create this massive shame complex in your head. So, and that's still something that I battle.
So I remember we were talking to Ross. He sort of said that being put on him, compounded with that in the Brethren environment, resulted in him feeling quite worthless at times. Did you have a similar emotion growing up?
Absolutely, yeah. Because I knew we were in an odd environment anyway. People would look at us weirdly in the shops, and but then you're in a minority, so I was already feeling like an odd one out. And you do feel worthless, especially when you're not particularly high up in the whole system you've got.
Yeah.
And you said, Fritz, you still feel shame to this day. Do you have days where you don't like yourself for who you are?
Yeah, so it was worse obviously when I first came out, but I've got better at it. Yeah, there's just times I think when I meet, particularly when I see Brethren in the shops, it all comes flooding back. That is a big trigger. I saw Mum in our local supermarket last year, I think it was, and I hardly recognised her. She didn't look great. But I ran off. Literally, Paul turned around and was like, I don't know where he's gone. And I messaged Mum after saying, I saw you, but I just ran off. And she was like, why do you think that was? And I just said, it's the fear that's been created since all this time. There's no contact, the shame that's built up. It's what's happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I can fully understand exactly where you're coming from there.
Yeah. So I think, when I was 18, that was the first time I started talking to a guy using my Brethren mobile. That was a dumb thing to do. And my parents called me down one evening and asked what this number was on my phone bill that appeared so often. I denied all knowledge, and they said, well, it's from an area where there's no Brethren. So there's no excuse for that. Still denied everything. And eventually I was so racked with guilt, I just sent a little letter of my confession under their bedroom door, and eventually I had my first priestly the next day. And even one of the stand-up points then was, one of them asked, on these apps, is it just men, is it just women, or is it a mix? And I said, oh, it's just men. And it didn't go any further, yet when I came out properly, they were shocked that I came out as gay. So I don't know where the thought process was, but ridiculous. But what was ironic about that is that was during the time before RRT. So there's their Pi Days, which I think stood for public interest events or something.
Oh yeah.
We have those. Yeah.
So they opened up their meeting room car parks where you could go and have a bacon roll and a chat or something. And we had to go, and my brother and I had to go and pick up the signs from my brother. And ironically, it was in Brighton, so we spent the day in Brighton the next day. Brighton was obviously a particularly known city for their LGBT community. Not that I knew that at the time. But yeah, then eventually I sort of started buying phones from other companies. I realised my mistake. I still remember the first time I went to Argos to buy my first phone. I was still convinced that they would be able to track me through Wi-Fi or something. It was sort of, he had this embedded thought that they'll be able to track you, whatever you do, whatever protection you put around you, they can still get you. But anyway, it eventually turned out that Dad would find it under my mattress or in my clothes drawer or anywhere else that I could possibly try and hide it. But yeah, through getting those phones, I started finding out about just the outside world, and obviously the gay community as well, finding out I'm not actually the only gay in the village. And it's ridiculous, but I genuinely thought I was the only one in the world, let alone in the Brethren, that felt this weird feeling that I knew was different from everyone else. It blew my mind when I actually found out there's another gay brother. I thought that's absolutely incredible. We don't all, it's not just me that's suffering from this. And I remember the first time, because I really battled with it. I prayed against it, prayed I'd get cured. Got to the point where before I escaped, I was praying to God that he would either cure me or take me. I die, and just because it just got to that stage where I was like, if this is what he wants from me, as in to be cured, then he would do it. Otherwise, let me go, because I can't do this thing.
Yeah.
And then so during that time, I did eventually sort of accept that I was gay. I remember talking to myself when we were going to one of our many walks in the countryside with the family, and first time I said it didn't feel evil or wicked or anything. It just felt right. It didn't suddenly bring in all the feeling of wickedness that I thought it would. And then so I realised I couldn't obviously continue my life in the Brethren. It wasn't gonna work. The expectations that were creeping up on me regarding buying a house and getting married. I was 21. I was a year off from being expected to get married. And I went through stages of getting rid of these phones and then buying them again and getting rid of them. And one time my boss pulled me out of the office and said, look, we know you've got a worldly phone. And it turned out his wife had rummaged through the company car that I was using and found some packaging of the mobile phone. Very weird. That went in the shredder. And I think the more I saw of the outside world, the more I felt trapped. There's one particular time in a Sunday dinner at someone else's house, and I thought, I really want to get out I really feel like I just, I need to stop this. And ultimately, I could have got up and walked out the front door, but the mental prison that you're in is incredible. The way they build it up and make you feel like you're physically restrained it's amazing. So I met Paul in 2014, ghosted him for about 6 months, not proud of that, and we started meeting up for walks, literally just walking and talking and sharing sort of life experience, but I always kept my background as a secret. I had this underlying fear that he would go to the press. Like, we've all been taught this fear of the attacks from the press, and we had these special meetings to pray against the attacks of the press. And I generally thought he would go and expose me and the brethren, and it would all, come to a bad end. And one time when we were on these walks, he said, "So, are your parents religious?" I was a bit like, "I'm going to get out of this one." He was like, "So they're Mormon or JWs?" Or I said, "Oh no, they're brethren." And he actually kind of knew about the brethren already. He had actually been told to go to he comes from a religious background. He had already had been told to go to a church in Basingstoke, not the Brethren Church, but he ended up turning up at the Brethren door, and they told him he had the wrong church. Yeah. So we could have met in the Brethren, weirdly. But he was turned away because he wasn't the right person. So there we go.
He obviously wasn't well disposed. I think that's the word.
Absolutely not. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And to be honest, he wouldn't have lasted 5 seconds, to be fair, because he would have asked too many questions and broke too many rules. But that time he started talking about his relationship with God, and I found it absolutely incredible because he talked about him like it's his best friend, and it was the way he talked about it was so real and so loving. I'm not religious in any sort now, but the way he talked about his relationship then, and it blew my mind that someone out here in this supposedly wicked world, and who was also gay, could also have this amazing relationship with his God. So eventually I told him I want to escape, get out. He became very emotional. He's got 4 children, so the thought of him losing a child was something he couldn't comprehend. And then so I started planning my escape. So I became paranoid about everything. So I put lists together of things to take, things to do, people to speak to. I put timetables together of when the family would be in the meeting rooms or at home or in the church. But it all came to a bit of a messy end. So one afternoon I was late home from work, partly on purpose. And I started getting messages from family that didn't used to message me that much. And we arranged to go around to one of my family's house because they wanted a cake done or something. Anyway, when I got home, my dad was there, which is also odd. The householder wouldn't ever stay home for a meeting. And he asked me to stay home and wait till mum comes home. And then eventually mum came home, and I was told to go upstairs to speak to her. And each step of that stair felt like an absolute mountain. She was sat on her bed sobbing, and she motioned me to come and sit next to her, which I did. And she produced this list that she had found in my wardrobe. And it literally said on top, things to take when I leave. So there was no getting out of it. I could tell the fear was very much the fear of what I was about to do, but also fear of where I was going to go, because she generally thought that I had no one out here. She was saying, who are you going to go to? There's no one out there for you, and the rest of it. Then she said I had to go for a walk, then called Paul and said, look, you need to come and get me tomorrow morning. Once they find out, that's it. There's no escape from it. They start putting things in place to try and keep you in. And I thought there'd be a window of time the next morning where my mum would take my sister to school and my siblings and dad would be at work. However, the next day they made sure someone was at the house the whole time. So I made out that I went to work, and so Paul came eventually, and we sat there for what seemed like a lifetime. He was sort of saying, are you going to do this? And I knew that it's either we go now and there's no return, or there's not much other option. So we raced off to Winchester, feeling like we're being tracked by every brethren in the world. Turns out there was brethren sent out to search for me after I told them that I'd gone. And that was it. I went back to Paul's house, and that was the start of this roller coaster, basically. I did have my coming out letter, which I thought I could possibly share if people wanted me to, or
that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be
great
good
to see that, Fritz. Yeah.
It's very much in brethren speak. I put this together and way before I left. It took about, I don't know how many tries to put this together to make sure I had included everything. So it does talk a lot about God, but that's the way we're brought up. So I put, Dear Dad and Mum, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I've made the decision to leave the brethren. This hasn't been a rash decision. I've thought and prayed about it for months, and I've needed to get my thoughts around it. I apologise for not telling the truth when Dad had that chat with me the other day. I thought I was doing what was best. You're the best dad and mum I could want, and I've got 2 brothers and sister who I love very much. I don't want any of you or any of the brethren to think it's something you've done that's made me move away. I'm very grateful for the support you've all given me, and obviously all that you've given me over the past 21 years. I want to tell you a few things that will hopefully help you understand why I've made this decision to leave. I've known all my life that something was different about me. Right from when I was a kid, I felt something wasn't quite the same as everyone else, but I wasn't able to figure out what it was. As I've grown older, I've learned what it's all about, and it's been tough to come to terms with, and it's been a big part of why I've struggled over the years. To cut straight to the point, I'm gay. I know this isn't something you wanted to hear, and it certainly wasn't something I wanted to accept. I've prayed about this for years, praying that I would change. I've spoken with God and asked that I either be changed or he would take me. I fought against it, fought against my feelings, but I found like it can't change, and that is how God created me. It's not a choice. I mean, you would choose to be gay anyway. It's how I've been made, and we all know that God doesn't make mistakes. Only in the past couple of years, I've come to terms with it and had to accept it. But I've had to show a different side of me to the brethren. So I've been feeling like a fake, and that I've been living a lie that I can't do, and I can't do that anymore. That's not what God wants anyone to do. I found that God loves me, and even if I am gay, as we serve a God that loves all men, I want you to realise that I'm not leaving because the world looks like an exciting place. It's because I can't live a life that's two-faced. We all know that the brethren don't accept gays or any other sexuality in fellowship, so I made a decision to move away, a decision I knew would cost me everything I knew and everything I had. I do just want to say that coming to terms with who you are is a very, very real struggle that can't be taken lightly. I want to point out that when as a young person going through this, it's very confusing and bewildering, and also extremely frightening. I've also hoped and prayed that it's something that's passing, but it won't change. Yet you have people around you telling you how corrupt we are, how that we are all against God. I've personally experienced name calling of the worst kind that probably didn't mean anything to the person who said it, but it hurt me badly. So please be sensitive and make them realise that they are loved, whoever they are. Don't make disparaging remarks or criticise anyone when you don't know what's going on deep and down inside them. I love each one of you. I don't want to do this, but I have to. I love you. I love our Saviour, and I can only pray that you'll be given the understanding of what this is about. I want to meet with you this week to collect the rest of my possessions. I want to thank you all for what you have done for me. You've brought me through times of good and bad, and I don't regret anything. I don't hold anything against any of the brethren, and I hope one day a person like me is accepted and loved as much as anyone else. Love to you all, your son.
Wow. Gosh. Did you send it? Did you get a response from sending it?
So I emailed it because I didn't have the guts to say it to them face to face. When I spoke to Mum, that time she spoke to me about finding the list, I was so close to telling her then, but leaving the brethren is one thing. Also being gay is another level that I just couldn't deal with at the time. So I just didn't feel it was the appropriate time. So I emailed it to them. They took, I think it was about a day to respond. And the first thing was, we'd had no idea. which still baffles me. But
yeah,
there we go. Maybe that's my head now that I don't understand it.
It's denial, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And
Yeah.
also, I think it's a little bit of, they said when I first came out, they said, we won't tell anyone else about your situation. And situation was always the code word for gay. They couldn't say it.
yeah,
Which is fair enough. It took me a while to say it myself. But yeah, they said they didn't tell anyone. Turned out they told a few, but there we go. I think it's probably to help people to understand, especially like my older brother and that kind of thing. Because I was a compliant Brethren boy. For me to suddenly leave, I guess they had to have an explanation of why I would suddenly up sticks and ditch everything that I had ever known. Especially when they knew I was so close to mum, it wouldn't make sense for them. Especially like my little sister was 11 when I left. The first time I went back to the house to collect the rest of my stuff, she had no idea I was there. She came to my bedroom where my parents were sort of telling me, you don't have to take everything. You don't have to take everything. And yeah, my little sister came in, she just burst into tears. And she was she's quite like Dad. She never really showed that much emotion when I knew her. She had 3 older brothers. She had to, hold her own. But we were obviously fiercely defensive of her. But that's the first time I've seen her properly just completely break. And again, it's that fear. It's the fact that she thought I was going into this weird, wicked place, even at that age of 11. I did see her a couple of times afterwards where I went to collect a couple of other bits afterwards, and she treated me like she had always treated me. I looked very different. But she was telling me about her pet rabbit. She was telling me about school. It was like nothing had ever happened. It was amazing. But yeah, so yeah, I also want to touch on what's happened since, because I wanted to tell people actually there's the trauma and there's the pain and the grief, and also there's also the life on the other side. Because I'm now loving life. I'm a lot more confident. Last time I saw Roz was probably in a meeting room, which is probably quite a weird thought, but yeah, I feel like a different person. I wouldn't say boo to a goose when I was in there. And
You're just a little boy somewhere.
yeah, exactly. I didn't feel like an anyone. I don't think my family felt like an anyone either, really. But so yeah, when I first left the Brethren, I never could put on weight, and it's a little bit of a brag, but also I didn't like it either. But after the Brethren, I went down to under 10 stone. I'm now 15.5 and very proud of it. So
yeah, go for it.
It's really, I do really feel it's like, and it's only been in, especially in the last 2-3 years, it's just how contented I'm feeling, just comfortable. So part of my getting out and coming out and finding this new journey has been finding all the amazing connections from this outside world to the inside world. When I started following one of the ex-Brethren Facebook pages, one of my, a third cousin, I think he has also left way before I did, and his auntie messaged me. She's also ex-Brethren, and she messaged me saying, I'm in touch with your family in Canada. And so my grandmother on my mum's side, she is the only one in her family that stayed in the Brethren when there was some sort of split in the 70s. She was already in love with my grandpa. She was 16. They got married not much later. And the rest of the family left. So my great grandpa and grandma, 2 uncles and an auntie. And we obviously never spoke to them. They had turned their backs on the Brethren and the great man at that time. I remember seeing a photo of them once, but we never knew their names. They were wicked. We had been told that my great grandpa and great grandma had died in their sins, as we've been told.
Wow.
So I had this message saying that we're in touch with your Canadian family. And I hadn't even thought about it when I was planning to leave, because they were never part of our lives. So I got a message from my great auntie from Canada, and they sent over 2 photos of them all, and it was incredible because they look just like me. It's amazing.
Really?
One literally looks like them, yeah.
Yeah.
And my great grandma is very much alive. she is now, so this year she'll be 94.
Wow.
Up till COVID, she spent all her time volunteering at a homeless shelter.
Wow.
Gosh.
Yeah. And I remember that we organised for me to have my first phone call with her. And of course, I didn't know what to expect, and I was also incredibly nervous. But she answered the phone, and there's this sweet little English-sounding lady on the other phone, and we both cried. It was amazing. She's an incredible human being. Absolutely beautiful human. So we've.
That's a little bit like the story you told, Ros, when you met your grandmother.
Yeah.
You never knew.
Yeah.
You have these things that they said about them, and you genuinely believe.
Yeah.
It's been my formative years, so you believe it, and then you can find out there's actually that she volunteers her time at homeless shelter when she's in her early 90s. I mean, that's what sort of wicked human being does that? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
To sound like evil people, and they're these sweet, darling, and most Christian people that you were so genuine.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That reminds me of my story as well, Fritz, because my uncle on my mum's side left at Aberdeen, and they were over in the Isle of Man. And I'm now in touch with my cousins over there, and they just welcomed me with open arms straight away the first time I spoke to them. And like you say, your great granny, she's been volunteering for, the homeless shelter. Well, my cousin was coxswain of the lifeboat over in the Isle of Man, risking his life for, just voluntarily.
Yeah, so, exactly. It just, it's still, it's amazing. So my great grandpa, he has died, but his first name is Edgar. So I asked my great grandma if I could take his name when I got married, and she was over the moon, bless her, because obviously we've had no connection. We're very much separated in every way. And I met my great uncle. He came over to visit his son, who's now living in London. And he gave me the biggest, warmest hug and just said, "Welcome to the family." And it was just still gives me goosebumps now.
Yeah. Well, it's just that sense of belonging, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And go on.
Sorry. And family does mean so much, because your own have discarded you. I don't mean that they have literally, but they've had to. And so when you get that genuine warmth and love from someone that doesn't know you but is family, then it means so much.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the weird way that you have that connection immediately.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The same thing happened with me with my cousins. We're also similar. It was like being sort of part of my family again. Sort of these girls were just sort of
and it's like you've known them for years, isn't it? Not just just meeting them for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's another time when so there's this lovely couple who my Paul got in touch with and was friends with before I appeared on the scene. So he met them through the street pastors in Winchester. And so the Imelda, my friend, she is German. And my auntie in the inside, she got engaged to a German guy and moved to Düsseldorf quite a while back. She was really dedicated to learning the language and used to babysit my sister so she could, during the meetings, so she could do her German homework and this kind of thing. And I built up a big love of the German language, and I loved going to Germany. And it's ironic that obviously my name is Fritz as well. But during our wedding celebration, my friend Imelda was talking to my cousin who left the Brethren, and it turned out that my friend Imelda had been my auntie's German teacher.
Oh wow!
So we had this incredible connection that we never knew. Yeah.
How incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. So she had spent some time in our grandparents' house as well. It was just, just shows that, you know, it also makes you realise that it's meant to be. You know, if it was this wrong, then why does it all snap up so quick? So right.
Yeah.
It sort of gives you a sense of belonging, doesn't it? Because you've got this, okay, they're not your immediate family, but there's this extended family who accept you just the way you are. And I don't care who you are, all humans like to fit into a community of some description, don't they?
Yeah.
And it gives you that. I mean, I know you've got your husband, but it gives you that extended feeling of belonging, doesn't it? Which is so important for well-being, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
absolutely. When in the Brethren, obviously you're so walled up, you're so enclosed in this community that feels like it's physically you're in a different community. You know, you feel like you're in a separate world. To the fact that realise actually there are connections that cross over into the other world. It's amazing.
It ties. It's just that continuation. I mean, the Brethren call themselves the community, and they refer to now I understand they refer to anybody outside as non-coms, as in non-community people. Yes.
Oh, that's a new one. A move on.
No, it was one that was an insider used to me recently, so I thought I'll put that because it was me. Yeah, a non-com. So
non-com.
Yeah, non-com. So, it is a community, but the problem with the community, and I do apologise for the issues I'm having with my video camera, by the way. I'm just going to go off and go on. I'm not quite sure why it is. But it's a community that you have to conform to. It's not a community that will accept you just as you are. It's a community where you have to be, as you said, Fritz, a good Brethren boy. And being a good Brethren boy, and if you don't fit that mould, then it can't be your community, can it?
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously, as a brother, you're expected to take part in the meeting regularly and preach and the rest of it. And I found that absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
Whenever we would go abroad to visit my auntie and uncle in Germany, you're expected that evening you'll probably have to say something in the meeting, and that. Any times abroad were ruined because I'd have this dread getting to the meeting where again you're being judged by people you don't know on what you can tell them.
I can fully relate.
It's always expectation, and I hated that. And I think one of the things when I came out was suddenly having this realization that you're never going to ever have to preach again. And it was just it was like such a lovely feeling.
Liberating. Absolutely liberating.
I always wanted to preach.
No chance, Anne. Chance.
I would have had loads to say.
I think the last meeting I ever attended, I actually gave the hymn out at the end of the meeting. So that's
really?
So Fritz, how long ago is it since you left the Brethren now?
So I left in 2015, 7th of July 2015. So we're coming up almost 8 years now.
8 years.
Yeah, generally didn't think I'd last this long. I remember trying to work out in my head during one of the meetings how long I'd last. Because obviously the rapture's coming and all the rest of it. And I literally generally didn't think I'd get to 30. It's ridiculous, but here we are, 1 year off. So
I get that. Anne, go on.
So no, I was just going to say in that wondering how long you're going to last. I don't know about you, but when I first left, you felt like you had to fit everything into a really short space of time. You had to get all these things done really quickly. Because you're never going to survive, something's going to happen, you're going to be punished in some way. And so it was like, it's strange. I've slowed down now, but it was like, for a long time, it was like, have to do this, have to do that,
Absolutely. And even in the smaller things, it's slightly related to that. When I used to go shopping, I used to literally almost run around the shop to make sure we weren't part of, rubbing shoulders of the world and the rest of it. And even now, Paul still has to tell me to slow down. The world is not going to end anytime soon. You're going to be fine.
The rapture won't come while you're in the shop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but, you'll be fine any day apart from the Sunday. But
So
and
I was going to ask, in those, I was going to switch my camera off. In those 7-8 years, how much contact have you been able to have with your immediate family?
So in the first few months, it was. I had a fair bit of contact, I'd say. And especially at the start, it seemed very warm, very loving. There wasn't any begging to come back or anything like that. I remember, so we had one. I met up my parents for a coffee a couple of days after I left. One of the first things Dad said was, "I didn't realise you could cure it," and he thought it was like you're gay for life, but until he was told by someone else. And
you mean cure being gay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, right. So yeah.
Even he didn't realise, and I sort of did ask, what was the help, and they weren't too sure. Apart from it was educational help first.
But do you think somebody in the Brethren had perhaps spoken to your dad and said, "Hey, we can cure Fritz of that," a bit like they did to you, Ross, about your therapy sessions? Yeah.
I'll just share this with you, Fritz. As you know, I had various addictions, and the local Brethren thought that me going to AA meetings would turn me straight.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
That's a new one. Wow, it's like, yeah. No, I did have a priest turn up at my door once where I lived, and I lived on my own. Stupidly didn't check who it was before I opened the door, and he was stood there. And I asked him what the help was, and he wouldn't tell me explicitly what it was. And I questioned him about the separation thing then as well, and he turned on a pin. Then he was absolutely livid that I'd even questioned it, and he said, "That's the first thing you all question." And I said, "I generally don't understand it, because if you really have this genuine love and relationship with God, why don't you want to share it with others?" And there was a guy walking down the street at the time, and he said, "Well, that guy, we don't know if he's a murderer or a rapist." And I was like, what? And that was his explanation.
And yet they're harbouring child abusers and everything in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then, since then, that Christmas of that year, I turned up at my parents' house. My older brother opened the door because he wasn't in the meeting. He probably got home late or something. He showed me around the house. Family came home. They all hugged me. We drank coffee and tea. We had something to eat. They asked me to play the piano for a bit. They wanted to hear it again. And it was very much suddenly, for a brief moment in time, it was all cut back to normal just for a little bit. They all talked to me like I was just like they'd always talked to me. And then obviously when the time came for me to go, Mum burst into tears, and that was the last time I had proper contact with anyone, really, a proper sort of, social contact. Eventually they turned up at my door once to tell me that I'd been shut up the night before. That was when they were really cold. There was no hugs from that point onwards. And then I got a letter from my dad and the two priests telling me that I'd been withdrawn from, and they got Mum to write out the letter and send it. Which it made me feel physically sick, because I knew that would have an impact on Mum. Having to send that letter to your own son that you're withdrawn from is just...
That's actually really cowardly, isn't it?
Yeah. It is,
I mean, that actually makes me feel quite angry, because...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they don't generally get women involved in anything priestly wise anyway, and then to use your own mother to write that letter, that's just awful.
Yeah, it makes me really angry that they use the ones that you're closest to.
Yeah, absolutely.
To dirty work, basically.
And they knew that it wouldn't be the same if Dad sent it or one of the priests. It wouldn't have the same impact, but.
No, but for her as well, do you think
for her
they would have? Yeah, but do you think they would have done that sort of to make
Possibly.
her feel? Yeah. Feel that she had to cut you off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
I know she's not been well since, not physically, but she has struggled. She has told me that, and I get a lot of guilt and shame from that. That's natural to feel that from when you think you've hurt your mum. But yeah, I know a lot of that is also 98% of that is also the Brethren. It's not my doing. I didn't choose to be part of it.
All of it. The guilt is not yours, because you're not the person that's cut her off.
Yeah,
I think it's such an easy way to feel like that, but I think the answer is, if your mum came and knocked on your front door tomorrow, what would you do? You know,
Yeah,
you haven't
exactly.
cut her off. You would put the kettle on for her, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
or whatever. Yeah.
And it's been since then. It's first couple of years there was no birthday things or anything like that. I used to send them cards and gifts, and I still turned up at the door. And eventually they asked me to stop turning up or sending gifts. They said it was too painful for them, which is fair enough. I understand that completely. No, it goes both ways. And then it kind of went down to sort of emails, but you're not really sure if they received them if you didn't get response. Now I use WhatsApp, a little bit easier to send messages. But again, it's very much me checking in to ask how they are. We're fine, thanks.
And this is another thing I find about contact with the Brethren. I was told once by the Brethren, loads of people that have left the Brethren have contact with their family, but the contact is always on their terms, isn't it? Always on their terms. And it's always us ex-members thinking, well, I better not say that because I'll upset them, and I better keep the subjects to this and this so I don't upset them. And even to the point where the contact I've had with my brother, he doesn't even ask how I am, not just a general how are you. It's completely on their terms. And that's just, says it all really, doesn't it?
It's very much reduced to pretty much nothing now. I mean, I've sent a Mother's Day message yesterday, but got a very short message back. But again, I know that's not mum. You know, I always
absolutely.
know. I always understand that's not mum. And I know in the back of the head, I still remember that. You know, I have all those other memories to make sure that I keeps my head above water. Because it is difficult. Because when it does feel very personal, doesn't it? Especially when it becomes your own mother.
And because you were so close with your mum, how do you cope with that now? You know, the loss of her.
It's a continual struggle, really. I think it was obviously a lot more difficult to start off with. But as time goes on, you know, I've had therapy as well, and you build up a new network, and it certainly doesn't fill the gaps that's been left. But it does help you move forward. I mean, there's so many others, you know, so many more new friends and family that I've got, and Paul's got 4 children, and they've all included me as a family member. And I really feel like, you know, when we have Christmases and family dinners together now, I feel like a part of the family, like I did back then. It usually takes me a while to thaw out, but with them now, it's just like it's normal. So Paul's dad is getting on near 90 now. He's a very particularly blunt and no nonsense type of guy. But even he now introduces us to his visitors and carers as his sons. And that was the big thing, because he was very much from that generation where it's, you know, he's just very blunt, and even he can love me. So
my partner's mum is exactly the same. She always refers to me as her son to anybody she meets. And it's really lovely that you've got that. It really is.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what a lot of ex-brethren do, isn't it? We find, if you like, another family, and another. You've found Paul, and Ross has found his partner, and we all have. And then you get. It doesn't replace that family you've lost. It doesn't replace, but it fills that hole. And it's. I don't think. The saddest thing, I think, is the families that are in there are hurting too. I'm sure your mum hurts, Fritz.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure she does. And I'm sure Ross's mum hurts, and our immediate family, Anne's children will hurt, and Ross's parents will hurt. But they can't do anything about it. That the control that is holding them, they can't do anything about it. So they end up having to believe that we're whatever they want to believe, bitter or wicked or whatever they want to believe, to try and make themselves feel comfortable in the environment they find them in. And it's just so sad, and it's just so wrong, isn't it?
And I think sometimes that's why they can't cope with seeing us. Like you said, it was too painful. I think because they're trying to paint this picture of this awful person, yet when they meet you, you're still you.
You still
and they can't put those two things together.
Yeah.
So in their mind, they just have to separate it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's one of the things when I turned up at the door and we had a genuine chat. I wasn't, I would ask how they've been doing. I'd tell them about work, and it was all very normal. I think that kind of put them off because they were like, you suddenly have horns or something. I don't know, but it is. You're just like the same person who left, left the home. Yet we're meant to be thinking of you as this person who's on this slippery slope.
And I remember Mum saying on the phone shortly after I left, she said, "I can't understand it because you just still sound like Anne." But then when I see you, I can't cope with it. Because you don't look the same, but you still sound the same. You're still talking about the same things, But it's really difficult for them.
It is difficult for them. And I think too, as you say, Fritz, you talk to your family and you're still the Fritz who was part of their family that they know. And that actually, they say upsetting, but actually I think it completely unsettles them because then they start to think, well, okay, this person has a different life, but he's still the same person we know. And if they start to question that how you can still be the same Fritz they know and love, then they're going to start to question so much more, and they cannot afford to do that. The consequences of going down that road is they'll end up where we all are.
Exactly.
They're basically just frightened to go down that rabbit hole.
Yes, they are. So they protect themselves. And then I also think, Fritz, you referred to your mum not looking terribly well when you last saw her. I also think continually not going down that rabbit hole, that you can end up, I'm saying this partly from my own experience. I know it's many years ago. I've been in the Brethren with this huge dissonance because you see people and you think, well, actually, there's nothing wrong with them, but I have to believe there's something wrong with them. So you're continually trying to draw that there must be something wrong with them. There must, because I'm in this special place. And I think that's why they a lot of them can end up with this huge mental conflict. I know I did when I was in, but luckily I left when I was very young. But I think if I'd stayed, it would have got worse, that mental conflict.
Absolutely.
So go on, Fritz. Go on.
And I really wanted to quickly mention as well, when I first started looking at getting out, I went on the Wikipedia page at the time, had a little help button, and I emailed someone on there, obviously anonymous, and they got me to get in touch with another guy who left, who's gay. And I remember the first thing he said to me, I was sat in an Asda car park thinking, God, this is, well, probably not God, but this is the first step of a very, very slippery slope. And the first thing he said to me was, Fritz, you need to realise that everyone out here is not how you've been taught. And it's something that I already kind of started seeing, but it was the light bulb moment that I needed. And it's something that I know other people have mentioned as well on the podcast as well, that we need to realise that people out here are out to help you, hold you up. I went to the barber's about 3 days after I left. He asked me what haircut I wanted. I said I had no idea. It wasn't this. And so I started telling my story, and they said, this is why I don't know how to have my hair, which sounds ridiculous. And it blew his mind. But we then had, we kept in contact over the years. And then the barber down the road now, she was in touch with me about the whole BBC thing that I did, and she was, being really much of quite a cheerleader, and lots of people at work, and people that you come across, like recruitment consultants getting you a job, and they've been really supportive. People are always out here to hold you up. Yes, of course there are bad people, but the majority are all here to help you and accept you for who you are. It doesn't matter what you can do for them or what you can say for them. They'll accept you for being you.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? The Brethren teach you that everybody out here, if they do something for you, they want something in return, and it's not the case at all. There are a lot of people out here that will help you just because they want to help you, and they don't expect anything in return at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Fritz, you mentioned when you were younger with your mum that you used to make cakes with her. Did I hear that right earlier when you were talking?
Yeah, so
tell us about that.
Well, so it's grown into a little thing that's happened. So So it all started really. I always used to love baking. Kind of obviously the sort of thing I used to do with Mum when we were little. And in year 12, we were all meant to be doing an A-level English course or something, and everyone dropped out apart from me and two girls. And they said, "Oh, just do a project." So we started up a cupcake cupcake project, where we researched, we built a brand, and we made cupcakes and sold them to the Brethren and that kind of thing. And I remember a guy coming in from the Brethren businesses, one of their suppliers, and he's showing us how to pipe. And I remember him saying, "Oh, you've got quite a natural hand at that." And I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever. Probably as a male, I probably shouldn't have." But and then so I went on to make cakes for Mum, so Mother's Day, birthdays, that kind of thing. And then my sister, especially in the last, I think 2 years before I left, both years I made cakes for her, and then my grandma. And it came a bit of a thing, I suppose. And obviously, all of a sudden, it stopped when I left, and then just started up again, just obviously for Paul and his family and that kind of thing. And then a friend and colleague at the time, she asked me to do her wedding cake, which is terrifying because I was also a guest. So this cake was sat staring at me for most of the evening, threatening to sweat and fall apart and the rest of it. But it was a massive success. It was brilliant, and it's snowballed from there. Basically, it's still very much a hobby, but I love the feeling that, or the feeling I get from seeing people's joy when they see the cake and how much time and care I've put into it. It's that's why on my Instagram I have the hashtag that cake feeling, because it's not just about the eating, which is really quite nice, but also it's the memory you have and the fact that someone actually cared enough to make it for you. So it started from there and it's just taken off really.
And you do quite a few now. Yeah, I was going to say,
can we show some photos?
Yeah, please do share the screen, Anne. You sent us some photos, so we thought we'd share them because they really are amazing, Fritz.
Very much self-taught, so it's all been a learning curve.
They are amazing, but it's a talent because you must have the imagination, then the gift to actually put the cake together. And
so they're always personalised. I don't like sort of getting someone. Well, I've had a few people sort of say, "Can you make this for me?" I had a wedding last year, which one of the photos will be where it's Van Gogh's Starry Night on a cake. They asked me to paint it on a cake, which I had so many moments where I was nearly going to say no to them. And also we had the heat wave last year, so we were 36-degree heat.
Ooh,
and we were also at that wedding as well, so that was but the cake stayed in the fridge, which is good.
Yes.
So it's just
I can't. Why can I not do this?
And if you give me a minute, I'll go back onto. I've had to switch to my phone, but I'll go back onto my computer and we'll try and do it. So, Fritz, are you happy to keep talking? And I'll switch back to my computer.
Problem at all.
Yeah. Tell us about how you made the cakes, because I think.
Yeah. So at the moment it's very much family and friends. They sort of hit, but it's done by word of mouth. And they just give me ideas of what they're looking for. I usually sort of, favourite colour, all the rest of it. And then I just spend some time just coming up with an idea that's going to be personal to them, and something that's you're not going to find on the internet. And as I say, it's very much a learning curve. Recently, I found out you can make edible moss, which I didn't realise a thing.
Okay.
And mushrooms, that was another thing. And then obviously this cake that I painted with Van Gogh's painting on it, that was, you have to make a special type of buttercream to be able to paint like on a cake, because obviously it doesn't have the same consistency as acrylic paint, and it's all done with a palette knife, so it took about 4 or 5 hours to paint it on. And then we had to take it up to somewhere up north, so it was a treacherous car journey with this cake wobbling around the back.
And do you sort of plan it all out? Like, do you draw it all before you actually do it?
I usually have a drawing of it. Yeah. Some things I leave to sort of see what happens. And usually it works out fine. So, that's a good thing. But usually I've drawn it out and I just Google everything. When she said, I want moss in a cake, I said, can you make edible moss? And it came up with how to make edible moss. It's just that.
You make that moss then?
Yeah.
I've seen a picture of it.
It's very much, it's almost like consistency of a really loose sponge texture.
Right.
And you literally mix eggs with a sort of flour and sugar and food colouring, obviously, because it's bright green. And then you microwave it for a minute in these disposable cups, and you cut it out. And it's just that. Absolutely bizarre.
Right. That's incredible. I thought that like edible moss, you must have just bought it somewhere.
Yeah, so you literally, it's absolutely bizarre, but it just shows that you can make anything.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
So, you've when you're doing the designs, do you come up with the designs mainly? Because you're obviously able to put so much together and it tells a story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's sometimes, so I said, as the wedding cake last year, she gave me a picture and said, I want this. And then I think I've only had one other person for a child's cake who said, this is what my son wants.
Oh, so, there we go.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Was that the wedding cake for it?
Yeah.
So this
amazing.
So this was the first, this is the cake that all blew it up. So hence why it's part of my logo now. They're beer lovers and festival lovers, so you can't really see it in that picture, but around the other side from the cake, the flowers, they are all miniature beer glasses and beer cans.
Oh, wow.
I think you can see them on the left of the picture. They're there,
Right, yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah,
and then we've got this one here.
Van Gogh.
The Van Gogh.
There's obviously a reference to Doctor Who, which I didn't have a clue.
I was going to say, what's that? Yeah, connection.
What's that for? I mean, I obviously realised it was Doctor Who, but yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah, so she's very much a Doctor Who nerd, so that's what that was.
And then we've got this one here.
So yeah, this was the one that appeared on the BBC thing. So yeah, this is just a friend's 40th birthday cake. It was a sort of weird mix of wanting it to look classy, but also Halloween. So we had leopard print and edible bats and that kind of thing. And the bottle is a reference to one of her favourite musicals is Wicked. I think it's Wicked. Where there's something about a green bottle. I don't know. This is what Paul told me. I don't know.
They all dress up as green bottles. I have seen it many years ago.
Like that,
yeah.
And how long does it take you to do these?
So it will be a good day and a half, probably. It's also obviously I do it around my full-time work, so I do make the sponges, then ice it, and then put the decorations on. So this is the edible moss.
Amazing!
It's amazing.
It's absolutely amazing.
So yeah, all the mushrooms are handmade from like modelling fondant, looking from pictures, and then I had a airbrushing tool, and the horns are from. So this cake was for a friend whose 25th birthday. She's a pagan, and into sort of all the sort of Norse gods and that kind of thing. So the horns are for like Loki, the god, Norse god.
Yeah.
It's actually very much a Hollywood thing, but apparently she likes it, so it's fine. And then around the back of it, you can't really see it, but from the 25 running down the back, there's this like a river of gold love hearts, and that's to represent Freya, the god of love.
God of love, yeah.
So, and she's in pictures, she's always got long sort of golden auburn hair, so that'll sort of represent that. So.
Yeah, they are absolutely amazing. And Fritz, out of interest, I mean, you've obviously got a real talent for this.
Yeah.
You do it alongside your full-time work now, but if you'd carried on with this among the brethren, would it have been acceptable for you as a guy to expand this and sell it as a business? Would that have been an acceptable work for you in the brethren?
No, absolutely not. I mean, if it was something that they could turn into something you create in factories and create high numbers of sales from, and I wasn't involved in it, then yes, it would be a business. But for me to have my little bakery down the road and little community and to have all these little cake shop, that would have been unheard of. One of the things weirdly, my dad spoke to me before I left, and he could tell something was up because I was very quiet and obviously trying to work my head around this whole new thing that was about to happen, he sort of said, "Oh, what about if we put you on like a course, like a cooking course or something?" And that was quite revolutionary because men don't go on cooking courses, especially when they're near marriage age. They have have a wife to do that sort of thing. That I think then they possibly thought that something might be up and offered me something that they knew I would enjoy. But no, I wouldn't have been a baker, and that wouldn't have been a thing. There's been times where there's initiatives that they ran where some of the brothers would do like meals and stuff like that. But by the time they got married, that business had gone, because they would obviously have to focus on family life and that kind of thing.
So this again comes down to the other factor, where within that community you can't be who you want to be, because regardless of your sexuality, if a guy wanted to become a baker or a hairdresser, which many guys do, it would not have been acceptable, would it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And Ross is shaking her head too. I mean, so again, it's restricting people's choices and people's, what they can do in life, and therefore the things that their natural personalities may be suited to, and they can end up being forced down a road that's just not for them.
Absolutely. The career paths are so restricted. You are sales, marketing, accounts, or possibly in the warehouse, and that was all you've got. So I spent the last 4 years recently working in a school as a teaching assistant, working alongside one-to-one with a student, and that was one of the most rewarding careers I've ever had. Incredibly rewarding to see this boy grow up and get through all this trauma he had and be part of his progress, and it was absolutely amazing. But that would have never been an option for Brethren. Working at school, there's not a chance. So I never fitted in those roles that they had. One of the like management courses that they had when they started bringing out, I started a sales and marketing course. I can't think what it was called now, but I didn't finish it. I didn't even get past the first page. I found it so dull, and there's no passion. Absolutely no passion at all.
Yeah, I remember. What you're saying brings me back to my daughter saying to me when she was still living with me. She said, "Mum, I'd really love to join the army or be an ambulance driver." Or something. She was really passionate about it, and I said, "Well, if you stay where you are, you won't be able to do that." And she said, "Oh, do you think they'd let me drive a forklift truck or something in a warehouse?" Because the last thing I want is to go in an office, sit in an office. Sadly, that's where she did end up, was sitting in an office.
So presumably at the schools, when you're at that 16 to 18 age, when you're sort of thinking about what you want to do, you don't really think about what you want to do because there isn't a whole avenue of choice in front of you.
No, the only kind of obvious option for me was marketing, because I could do designing leaflets and that kind of thing. But even then, that became a waste of time, because you're spending time doing all these leaflets. You're not actually creating sales. And it's all sales driven. It's all numbers in that. Of course it is, because it's a sales company. But I didn't have the gift of the gab. They sent me on courses for telesales. I was terrified of it. I had to eventually quit because it wasn't me. But weirdly now I work in recruitment and I do outbound calls all the time and it doesn't bother me. But I think it's because I'm myself now. I've got confidence. I can, rather than then I was this little quivering wreck that wouldn't, didn't feel I had any worth anyway. So then to speak to someone out in this wicked world to try and sell them something just wasn't going to work. It was never going to happen.
No. Well, Fritz, thank you so much for coming on and telling us your story. We really appreciate it. And I want to ask you a question that we actually asked Ross when he came on. If there was somebody in the Brethren who is gay, what would you say to them?
Well, I had a little bit written down for this already, so
you prepared. That's fine. Because
what would be your advice, Fritz?
So I actually did this, and I also did the BBC piece. I did it for all the little Fritzes still inside. You might feel worthless. You might feel like there's no way out. You might feel like you're a nobody trapped in a mental prison. You might feel like you have nothing in yourself that could possibly hold you through such a dramatic transition. I'm telling you now, you have got it. There are people out here that support you with no expectation of return. And there are people out here who will become dear friends that will hold you up in your darkest hours, celebrate you for you, and just enjoy your presence.
Yeah,
That's
I think
beautiful.
that's really lovely. Really
and
lovely.
I just have an extra bit for in case anyone else is watching inside there. My blood family, I obviously miss them a huge amount still. It's been almost 7.5 years, but it doesn't make any difference.
No, it doesn't.
I've changed, it's true. I've got less hair on my head, more hair on my chin, and more grey hair pretty much everywhere. So but I've got confidence and self-love and knowledge of the actual truth. I just want to be able to speak to my mum, and I want to be able to speak to my family. Yesterday was Mother's Day. The run up in the shops is incessant. The constant emails promoting it is draining. I loved celebrating mum. We did gifts, we did cakes, we organised gifts and meals. I apologise the time we bought you a steam iron. But I wish I could just celebrate Mother's Day, even just with a simple call.
And I think that's something I would say to the brethren, particularly the people that run the show, with all of the ex-brethren, that's actually all we want, isn't it?
Yeah,
we're not there to pull their church apart. We're not there to change their beliefs.
No.
We're not even there to stop their meetings. We're not even there to take away their charitable status, but they need to start acting charitable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
all we want is to be able to have a relationship with our families.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be doing these podcasts probably if that was the case, because that's the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's as I say, it's not like we want to have. I'm not expecting you to come around to my house and have dinner with me.
No,
that's not. No. I know I'm trying to be realistic. I just literally all I want is even just a response, a proper response to messages.
Yeah, just to be able to have a chat, a meaningful chat without any inhibitions.
Just have a normal conversation.
Yeah, like you used to with your parents or your children, Anne, or your family, Roz, whoever it is. Just a normal conversation without that invisible wall that's always there now.
And also I think with the family, especially not just parents but the family, I'm not going to be out to try and trick you into leaving. That's not my role.
No.
And I think that's partly when I came out, I was always a little bit wary of the other outsiders. I thought, they're all bitter and they're all out to get us and the rest of it. But it actually, you know what, we just want to have a chat with you. And it's nothing to try and persuade you to do anything. It's literally just to find out how you are.
And just to say, I'm still your son, I'm still Fritz, I'm still your mum, I'm still Ross, I'm still Roz, and so on. And it's quite interesting because I know that that's one thing that's been said about me and the brethren, is that I try and persuade people to leave and that I break up families. And I know that's been said about me. And you think, how can you even try and dissuade? That's the last thing in the world. I think most ex-brethren would never persuade someone to leave, because we all know how hard it is.
No.
It's not our decision to make, is it?
It's not our decision to make, no.
And it's a very serious decision to make.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah, all we can do is help those that have made the decision.
Yeah, I think sorry, Ross.
I was just going to say, all we can do is help those that are thinking of leaving to perhaps make that leap to actually leave.
Yeah. I think what Anne said on your podcast about with Cheryl about having that landing pad, that was very much an aha moment for me, because I sort of say, Paul keeps telling me that you've actually created a little pathway for other people that might want to leave. You've just created this little space where they can come and knock on the door, and you'll be happy to say, come in and just have a cup of tea. It's and
that's why I think it's very important, and I think it's really good that people like yourself and Ross and Ben have come and spoken on the podcast, because we know that there are people in there who are gay and are keeping that secret to themselves. And if they can see there's 3 people speaking openly about their struggle to leave and the effect it had on them, but hey, they're okay, they're doing all right.
Exactly.
Statistically, 1 in 10 people are gay, so there must be a whole lot of them in there.
Well, I know that the Get a Life team have been contacted by people that are gay since Ben Woodbury's podcast went out, and I can well imagine after your 2 podcasts there will be more contact as well, because hopefully it will give those people the confidence to think, hey, I don't have to fight this all on my own and keep this what they perceive a dark, dirty secret, which it isn't, but they perceive it that way when they're in, don't they? And they can just not have to live like that. So yeah, Fritz, thank you so much. We thoroughly appreciate your time. So it's been and your cakes are wonderful.
Thank you.
Might order one day.
Yeah.
Joe and I will get one. You'd make us one for our wedding.
Yeah.
Oh, go for it.
You've got an order out of it already.
Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me.